This conference will now be recorded.
Is any questions from yesterday's session? Anyone, anything from yesterday's session as such? So we were looking at a couple of things, a couple of new, let's say, things like SQL Server and SQL database to store our structured data. We're telling how do you go ahead and store something known as a structured data, for which I created something known as a SQL Server, and under a SQL Server we went ahead and created something called as a SQL database out here. So you have a server, and then you have something known as a DB database inside this particular server, and it will be a CBS. And after you create all these things, I went ahead and I injected the data using the query editor. We went ahead, injected the data using multiple statements. So yesterday I gave a link where which had, let's say, SQL commands. We use those particular SQL commands, injected, let's say, the data into it. And once you inject the data, this was the database basically that we were dealing with yesterday. Once you have the data injected, go into query editor and log inside this particular SQL database by using the ID and password that we set up. And again, it's saying cannot open the client IP and all that stuff. It's my IP is not whitelisted today. My IP address has changed. Yesterday it was a different IP address. Today it is a different IP address. So I'll say allow this particular IP. So this will go ahead update that particular SQL Server firewall rules to go ahead and add myself, and I'll say okay. And once I'm in, I have my tables called dbo.course, and if I want to see the data, I'll just select star from dbo.course database object dot course whose name is course out here. Say enter, and then I have all these things telling course ID, course name, rating, and all that stuff. So this is what we did, and then I said that okay, fine, this is good. SQL Server is there, SQL database is there, all is good. But again, if you are a user, if you want to, let's say, go ahead look at the data that my institution is offering, then I'm now telling that we will get something called as an Azure web app in place, so that you can just go to this particular web app, and the duty of the web app is to go into the SQL Server, get all the data, and give it to you on the website. This is what is the duty of the, let's say, the web application, and this is exposing my data over the internet securely without, I am not giving you the ID and password of the SQL Server. No, that's something that I'm not giving. I'm not giving anything as such. Rather, I am letting you just go to a public website, then go ahead, just do a read only mode out here. This is a read only website out here where you cannot edit anything, you cannot change anything, but you can, or you are only allowed to, or you are rather only, let's say, allowed to, let's say, go ahead and open up a connection with this particular application and look at, let's say, all the data that is in place. This is the intention that I want. This is where I want to get into. So yes, before I get started, any questions still here? Anyone, any questions still here with the creation of the SQL Server or the database, or how do you inject the data and all these things? Sir? Is that the only way to inject the data? Yes. Sorry. Again, if you have the Excel file, you can import the data into the SQL Server. You can import it, but you still need commands because SQL is a source query language. So you need a command to interact with that particular database out here. Yes, by using command, just like we use PowerShell to go ahead read a JSON file, get all the data. Same thing, you can use SQL commands. SQL developers, they go ahead and, let's say, write SQL commands in that way. These are basic, like these are very basic commands out here. Very, let's say, very intermediate, very basic level commands out here that we are doing. That's the only knowledge we need. A basic knowledge is good enough. As a DevOps engineer, we deal with the infrastructure of creating the SQL Server or the databases using ARM templates or PowerShell scripts, managing all these things out here. But as a DevOps engineer, you are not expected to have the knowledge of a SQL, let's say, language. Yes, only to create the infrastructure. Yes. Yes. Any more questions here? Anyone? Any questions earlier? Okay, so let's get started today then. So I have a resource group that I created yesterday, and inside that particular resource group I have a SQL server and I have a SQL database. Two things that I do have. Server goes by this particular name called demo SQL ABC. This is the fully qualified domain name of the SQL server. Again, we also saw how do you interact with the SQL server over something called as SSMS. Again, I'm telling you, it's very optional. You can go ahead optionally, you can interact with SSMS, but this is good enough. This is super good enough out here. So I am going ahead and let's say looking at the SQL server fully qualified domain name, and after that I have something called as databases inside the SQL server out here, which is a demo DB, which is online. And as you saw, I had a lot of data inside this particular SQL server. We ran a select star from that particular DB or something like this. And this is the entire data resource group. I'll create one more resource group today, and I'll say this is application RG, application resource group, for holding my web application in the same region where my SQL server really is. So my SQL servers, my SQL databases, and etc. If I want to confirm, they are sitting in ECUS2. I will also go ahead and create a web application in ECUS2 out here. Under the application RG, I'm saying create, and under this, I'll just go ahead and look for something called app service or web app or something like this. So there's app service environment. There's something called web app. This is what I need. I'll just go ahead and say create. Say create a web application out here. As and when I do a create a web app, it's asking me what is the subscription that I want to create this under and what is the resource group that I want to create this under. Once I selected both of them, I'll now go ahead and I'll say the name of the web app, and I'll say this is a demo web app XYZ000, something like this, so that the name is unique, so that the name is not taken by anyone else. And also it is .azure websites.net, fully qualified domain name of your web app out here. Again, I'll say code. I'll say .NET Core 3.1. This is the code that I would say. I'll just scroll down, and the region of the app service, I'll say it is ECUS2. And just to start with, I will choose my app service plan into something called as F1. This is a free tier plan that I'm choosing out. And when you are using a free tier account, this is the only plan that you get. When you go ahead and create it, this is the only plan that you get. Again, of course, you can change your plan at a later point in time. That shouldn't be an issue. And I will just go ahead and I'll say this is a demo plan, something like this. Change the size back again, and I'll just scroll down. I'll say deployment. I'll disable the deployment out here. I'll say networking. I'll disable the networking out here. I'll disable everything, and I'll just go ahead monitoring also. I'll go ahead and disable this out, and I'll just go ahead and create an app service under an app service plan, both in something called as ECUS2 region. Again, I'll say no. I'll say review and create this out here. So it's a free plan, and this is what I'm now creating, and I'll say create this out. And once I create this out, it's initializing the deployment, and once the deployment is initialized, I will be able to create an app an app service plan and an app service out here. So it's being created. Let's give it a minute or so. So I have a database. This is what I do have. I have a database, or I'll have a server database, yes, database, and also data under it. Multiple things out here: server, database, and also the data under it. After that, I am now creating an app service and an app service plan in the same region as my SQL server is ECUS2. Once created, now if this app service needs to communicate with this particular SQL server, needs to grab all the data, you need some kind of a code. you need to write some kind of a code so that this particular app service really behaves in the way you want it to. So the third thing is the code that we need to deploy out here. Again, I'm not writing a code. I already have a code. So if I go back into my link, yesterday I've given you SQL commands. In the same way, let's go ahead and let's go into the same thing. This was the SQL commands that I have given. The SQL app is the entire code folder. So if I just go ahead, share this link once again with you all. Again, suggestion or the request here is please go ahead, share this on the WhatsApp group as well, so that people offline coming offline can take the best advantage of this. So once you get into inside this link, you see a folder called SQL app. Just click on these three dots, say download as zip. What this is going to do is that this is now going to give you the entire SQL application or the code that you need for this entire, let's say, demo out here in the form of a zip file. And once you have the zip file out here, just say show in folder. Just say show in folder out here. And once you're inside this particular folder, just do a right click and say extract all. And once you have this extracted, you'll be able to see this particular folder called SQL app. And inside this folder, you'll be able to see something called as an SLN solution file. And if you have installed Visual Studios, double click on this particular solution file out here. This will open the Visual Studio. And once you're inside the Visual Studio, just go here, do a build and a publish. So I'll say, okay, I'll open this out. So I am earlier when we did a demo, I created a code. Today I'm using a pre-existing code out here. This is a code that I got somewhere from online. Someone has written this code. I'm not a developer. I did not write this code. Neither am expected to go ahead and understand this code. So I have all my code. Everything that is there in the right hand side is the entire code that I do have. So all the code is ready. All I did is did a double click, open this code out here. It's a .NET Core application, .NET Core 3.1 application out here. Now to check that out, you can just go here, click on this one onto the solution file out here. It's a .NET Core 3.1 application. This is what I do have. It's a Core 3.1. So I'll just click on this one and I'll say firstly I'll do a build to understand whether my code is all good. So it's now telling the build is started. It's telling this is built and build is good. Build is successful and all that stuff. Good, great. I'll next do a publish. So I'll click on publish, the same thing. And once in publishing, I'll just go ahead and say new target. And in here, it's now going to ask me where's your target. I'll say Azure. I'll say next. I'll say app service windows. I'll say next. And once I'm in here, it's going to ask me what is my subscription, what is my resource group, and also it identified my application-rg, which is the app service. Go into the app service, select this particular app service, I'll say finish. And one thing that I want to do here, just click on this configuration and say remove additional files at the destination. It's a publish this out. So once this is done, I'm now going ahead publishing my entire code. So all I did is downloaded my code, did a build, open this in Visual Studio, did a build, and then I did a publish of my code on top of that particular web application that I do. So this is what I did on an end-to-end basis. So did a build, did a publish, and once I'm publishing it out, it's going ahead talking to this particular website called demo abcxyz000, pushing all the code inside that particular website out here. And if I just scroll down, it said okay fine, this is good enough, it's successfully published, built is done, publish is done, successfully installed and all that stuff. It's restarting my web application, and finally once it's installing all the required extensions to run this particular application, it will just go ahead and open the search. So let's see. So publish failed, check the output for, okay, let's see. Okay. Uh, Fine. Yes. There was, I think there was an internet issue. That's the reason even this was giving an error. Like there was an internet issue out here. Probably that's the reason it's giving the error. I hope everyone is able to hear my voice and see my screen now. It's 17, 8, 18. Okay. I think there was, yes, a minute of disturbance out here. Yes. So I published the code and I'm going into the kudu services of my web application by going into the advanced settings, and I'm going here. And if I go here, look into the PowerShell, there is something called site, something called www root, inside which I'm able to see all my files out here. This is what I actually want. This is what I actually wanted to see. I'm able to see all my files, but if I go into the overview and if I browse for this particular application, this is the error that I'm getting. I can give the same link again to y'all. Okay. I can give the same link again to y'all. You all can also try. People online can also try this out. Going to this particular link, you all can also try this out and let me know what you're able to see out there as such. It's telling HTTP error 500 and all that stuff. Page is not working and all these things out. Why do you think this is coming up? Why do you all think this particular error is coming up? What am I missing? Okay, out of memory and all this stuff. This is fine. Okay, why do you feel or what do you think is the issue with this one? Haven't connected to the SQL server. Okay, I'll take that point. Anyone else? Okay, let me come the other direction. The code that we deployed. What is this code supposed to do? What do you think will the code do out here? Why are we deploying the code? To, sorry? Yes, but even if I don't deploy the code, I'll get the URL for the web app. I still have the URL. If I went into the URL directly, I would have got a simple HTML page. Then why are we deploying this code? User interface. Same error. Yes, correct. Yes, we will get the same error. This is expected. The code here is supposed to do one thing. The code that someone has written that we are looking at, is this supposed to do one thing? Whenever you reach out to this particular web application, the code is written in such a way that it will establish a connection with the SQL server, grab the data inside the SQL database, and give it back to you as a user. This is what the code is supposed to do. That's the reason I deployed a code. The reason I deployed a code is because I wanted to add a functionality to my web application. This is what I wanted to add. This is the functionality that I wanted to add to my web application out here. So then why is this functionality not really working out here? What do you feel is the issue? The code is not working as it is supposed to. The code is supposed to go into the SQL server, get into that particular SQL database, grab all the data and show it to you.